Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
It's my pleasure to be on.
So here's a funny thing about Islamophobes. Whenever Muslims try to explain their beliefs, like for example, about jihad or Sharia or anything, then Islamophobes come back with the claim that, well, this is Taqiyya. You're not telling the truth. You're trying to deceive us. So what is Taqiyya? For a long time, I didn't even know what that was.
Yes. And many of our Muslim viewers will be asking, what is that?
Yes.
Basically, the term Taqiyya is an Arabic term, obviously, and it comes from a root word which means to be careful, to be prudent. Taqiyya has this idea of practicing prudence or being careful to avoid harm. As a religious concept, it became prevalent among Shiite Muslims in particular in our history, where Shiites were minorities. They still remain a minority, but when Shiites were a distinctive minority within a larger Sunni Muslim context.
Within a political order.
Yes, within a political order. Sometimes they were subject to discrimination and very harsh treatment. So, to our shame, from fellow Sunnis. So as a prudent measure to avoid such discrimination, they would sometimes dissimulate and pretend
so they would
to be like...
hide their beliefs.
Yes, hide their distinctive beliefs to just go along with Sunnis. And this even emerged as a doctrine among them to emphasize that, okay, you do this. So some exaggerated the practice itself. So some Islamophobes now are looking at that and saying, okay, well, this is characteristic of all Muslims, and it's not only Shiite Muslims, but let's look at the Quran. The Quran itself prescribes this. And there is no actual verse of the Quran that actually prescribes this. But they will seize on something. For example, there's a verse in the Quran in the 3rd chapter, the 28th verse, which says that Muslims should not be friends with the non-Muslims except if they take some precaution. But that's referring to a war context in which Muslims were being persecuted, and it's not saying that Muslims should lie or anything like this, but it's saying that if you are going to be friends with non-Muslims in that hostile context,
more like allies, right?
Yes, then yes, exactly. It doesn't prevent Muslims today from being friends with non-Muslims at school, in your neighborhood, and in a peace-loving country such as Canada. It's in a context in which when Muslims became friends with people who were attacking them, there was a real danger that they would share sensitive secrets of Muslims to outsiders, secrets or knowledge which can be used by others who are interested in attacking Muslims. So the weak spots of the Muslims, the plans of the Muslims, the whereabouts of the Muslim army, and so on. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself, and where he might be and where he might be vulnerable to attack, and so on. So the Quran was basically here saying to Muslims, if you're going to take friends among non-Muslims at that time from those who are attacking you, then you have to take some precautions, like be cautious in the way you're going about your friendship with them, because you wouldn't want to reveal sensitive military secrets to outsiders. But
some Islamophobes also say, look, there are sayings of the Prophet Muhammad where he said, in war you can deceive. How would you respond to that?
Well, that's the exception to the rule. The general rule is that you cannot deceive. And in fact, you cannot deceive for personal benefit. This is totally haram or impermissible. But it's widely recognized by philosophers, ancient and modern, that in war, deception is natural. You make the enemy feel...
You can't share your secrets.
Yes.
Yeah.
As ancient as Sun Tzu in his classical book, The Art of War, this is well known. You make the enemy think you're going to attack from one direction and you actually attack from the other. So this is deception. So the Arabic saying is that al-harbu khida, this war is deception. So you use that to your tactical advantage. But that's in a situation of war. Not everything is in war.
It's not a generalized...
No, you can't generalize from that. In fact, the Islamophobes try to generalize from that to the extent that they go to a book called Reliance of the Traveler, which gives great detail about, in what situation and to what extent can you lie, and then they go ... removing the sections which emphasize honesty and truthfulness, and by this selective cut and paste method, they give the impression that this book, a classical law book for Muslims, is actually prescribing for Muslims to go about their daily lives lying and cheating and deceiving non-Muslims. No, that's not in an everyday social context. This is in the context of war. So what this book does actually say, in a nutshell, is that, first of all, truthfulness is what is prescribed in the Quran in so many different verses. Second, lying is proscribed, is prohibited in the Quran and in narratives which are traced back to our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. For example, there's a narrative which says that stay away from lying, because lying leads to wretchedness, and wretchedness leads to the hellfire. Another hadith says that the characteristics of the hypocrites are three. And when he makes a promise, he breaks it. When he speaks, he lies. And when he's entrusted with something, he mishandles the trust. The contrary is also mentioned in the hadith, that a believer may be committing a number of different sins, but it's not possible for the believer to lie. So that gives a clear message to Muslims.
Even to non-Muslims?
Well, it's so general.
Okay.
To lie, just period. This is very general.
Okay.
So all these statements have the single import of saying to Muslims, you cannot lie and you must be truthful. But then an exception is made. For example, what if you want to reconcile between two persons? So you go talk to the one and he says all kinds of bad things about the other. You go to the other and he says all kinds of bad things about the first. Now, if you want to reconcile these two parties, you don't repeat what they actually said. You could modify smooth over things because you want to make ends between people. You cannot smooth over things to misappropriate somebody else's property. That's lying and cheating, and that's totally forbidden in the religion of Islam. But you can smooth over things in order to bring people together and to remove friction and promote harmony. So when these books are giving these kinds of nuances about when it's permissible to dissimulate or to dissemble, the Islamophobes just cut and paste, use ... omit the cautions that you have to tell the truth, and they make it look like this is an Islamic teaching, just go about lying and cheating, which obviously is not Islam.
Thank you for your clarification, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.